Hi, Math 098. This is a review for Section D of the Math 098 Readiness Test. So let's go ahead and get started. As you can see on this test, you have slope-intercept form, standard form, finding the slope of a line, determining whether linear equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Then there is some graphing on this test. You also have to determine whether a line is horizontal, vertical, or slant, the intercepts, the slope of that line. So these are the concepts that you need to understand for Section D. So let's go through it. This will be part 1. Alright, number 1, 5x minus 12y equals negative 36. So to write the slope-intercept form of the equation, of course we need to put this, which is right now this is in standard form. We need to put it in the form y equals mx plus b. So basically that means that I need to get y on one side by itself. So let me write that here. Let me rewrite the problem here. 5x minus 12y equals negative 36. As you can see, x and y are on the same side, so we need to get that x out of the way first. So we're going to do that by subtracting 5x from both sides. If we subtract 5x from the left side, 5x minus 5x is 0, of course, and what we have left is negative 12y. So keep in mind there is a negative in front of that 12y, and because we weren't able to get rid of that negative, it remains. So that's a special side note for you. Now we have negative 36 minus 5x. Of course you can write it as negative 36 minus 5x, but I like putting it in mx plus b form, so where the slope is first, so that's why I write negative 5x minus 36. I'm not done because my y is not alone, or the coefficient of y is not 1. So I'm going to get rid of the negative 12 by dividing by negative 12. When I divide by negative 12, I have to divide both sides by negative 12. And since I'm dividing the right side by negative 12, I have to divide both terms as well by negative 12. Alright, negative 12 divided by negative 12, that cancels. Awesome. So we have y equals a positive 5 over 12. So why is that positive 5 over 12x now? Because negative divided by negative is positive. Make sure you know your rules before you do math, your integer rules, because that's very important. Alright, negative 36 divided by negative 12 plus 3. Since 36 is divisible by 12. So what we have is y equals 5/12 x plus 3. So that's all you have to do, because all it asked us to do was write the slope-intercept form of the equation. Make sure you are reading the instructions carefully and you are actually doing what the instructions tell you to do. Alright, next we're going to work on number 2. So let me go ahead and rewrite. Alright, so here we need to subtract the 10x. Cancels. We have 5y equals negative 10x minus 15. Again, I like writing this as mx plus b. So it's okay to write negative 15 minus 10x. I just like writing it this way. Then I'm going to go ahead and divide by 5. So my final answer would be y, since 5 divided by 5 is 1. 1 is understood, 1 times y. Negative 10 is divisible by 5, so negative 2x minus 3. Remember to always simplify your answer, so you're not going to leave your answer as negative 10 over 5x minus 15 over 5, because that's just an indicator that maybe you're not paying attention to details, okay, because you should know whether or not these numbers are divisible. And on this test, you are allowed a calculator, so you can always determine whether that number in the numerator is divisible by the number in the denominator. Alright, let's move on to number 3 now. Number 3 says write the standard form of the equation where a is greater than or equal to 1. Now let me go over a few rules with standard form. So here are the rules, write them down. Standard form is ax plus by equals c. So unlike the slope-intercept form, as you can see, x and y are on the same side. Notice that the constant c is on the opposite side. 2, there are no fractions. And the last rule is a must be positive. Now a here is the coefficient of x. So even if someone used another letter here, know that we're really saying the coefficient of x must be a positive number. Alright, let's get started. Make sure you write those rules down. If you look at number 3, we analyze why is this not standard form. First of all, we have a fraction. So, bam, we gotta get rid of that. So we gotta figure that out. Then x and y are not on the same side. And as it stands right now, the coefficient of x is negative. So we have to work all of these things out. So let's get started. So what I recommend you do is to get rid of your fractions first. I would recommend you to get rid of fractions first, because it seems like it makes things so much easier when you rid yourself of the fractions. So how would you get rid of this fraction here? Well, since this is an equation, you have to multiply both sides by the same thing. Or you can't multiply one side by something and not the other, because you always have to balance the equation. So in order to get rid of the fraction, you can multiply by the LCD. And the only denominator we have right now is the 5. LCD stands for least common denominator. So we have to multiply both sides by 5. And if we multiply the right side by 5, of course, we have to distribute, because you have to multiply everything on that side by 5. Now, 5 times y, that's pretty simple, 5y. A lot of people don't see this, however, as being simple as well. But if you look at it, notice that 5 here is in the numerator, 5 here is the denominator. They cancel out. I do not scratch this out because the 5 is still there. But when you multiply 5 times negative 2/5, notice that 5's cancel, and you're going to have negative 2x. I don't like to literally cancel out so you can see the marks, because I don't want anyone to think that the 5 is now gone, because you have to multiply the 5 times the 7 as well. So 5 times 7 is 35. Now the only other move that we must make is what? Now notice that we don't have fractions, but we have to satisfy the other two rules. And it's as simple as just adding 2x to both sides. That way, notice our x and y are now on the same side, so I'll write 2x first, plus 5y equals 35. So now, as you can see, we are in standard form because the x and y are on the same side. There are no fractions in this, and my a is a positive 2. It's not negative anymore. Alright, let's move on to number 4. Again, what did I recommend you to do first? You should get rid of those fractions by multiplying by what? Multiply by the LCD. In this case, it is 3. So we're going to multiply 3 times both sides. If we multiply 3 times y, we get simply 3y. But if we multiply 3 times negative 1/3, notice that the 3's you can cancel, and you have negative x left, or negative 1x. But 1 is understood. 3 times 7, 21. And again, all we simply do is just add that x. And we are in standard form since we have x plus 3y equals 21. X plus 3y equals 21 is in standard form. Moving on. Let's go to find the slope of the line that passes through the point. Now, when you're given 2 points, you find the slope using the slope formula. So let me write down the slope formula. You should write it too. So basically, given 2 points, you can plug in your points into the slope formula. Here in number 5, we have negative 9, 4, which is your first set of points, and 5, 2, which is your second set of points. Usually, we denote the first set of points using x sub 1, y sub 1, which the ones are subscripts, and they don't mean anything mathematically. They're just naming that particular point. So this is the first set of points. Now we have 5, 2, which is our second set. So that's x sub 2, y sub 2, our second set. All we're going to do now is plug in our information into our formula. So we have m equals y sub 2 is 2 minus y sub 1 is 4 divided by x sub 2, 5 minus x sub 1, negative 9. So let me go back over that. Always make sure. Sometimes we all make mistakes, and so sometimes we have to check our answers. So don't leave the room without checking your answers first. So y sub 2, 2 minus 4, 5 minus negative 9. So here's another tip. Most people, they forget that there is a minus in the formula as well as a negative sign. So make sure you have all of the minuses and the negatives you need. 2 minus 4 is negative 2, and 5 minus a negative 9. Of course, we can change this to positive, positive, which makes this 14. We can reduce that to negative 1 over 7. So the slope here, and usually represented by the letter m, is negative 1 over 7. Next, number 6. Alright, so let's call this x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2. And what I want you to do is say out loud the slope formula without looking at the slope formula. So I'll give you 5 seconds to do that. Alright, it is y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So it is the change of y's over the change of x's. And as long as you keep this consistent 2, 2, 1, 1, you are good. Alright, so make sure they are consistent in the numerator and denominator. So the same way you wrote it in the numerator, make sure you write it in the denominator. Alright, so we have 11, negative 11. So be careful about that. That's a negative 11 minus. Y sub 1 is a negative 8 over negative 4 minus 13. So here we have positive, positive, a negative 11 plus 8 is negative, of course, 3 over, now we have a negative 17. So do not leave your answer this way, in which it's not simplified. Negative divided by negative is positive, so you should write it as positive 3 over 17. So make sure you pay close attention to details. Now let's determine whether the pair of equations represents parallel lines, perpendicular lines, or neither. We have 3y minus 4x equals 15. So, what you first need to realize is that parallel lines have equal slopes. So if we find that the slopes of these lines are equal, then their lines are parallel. So let me write that. Parallel lines have equal slopes. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes. So opposite reciprocal means that the one slope is negative, the other one is positive. And reciprocal, of course, means one slope is the flip version of the other slope. So make sure you write these notes down. Let's find the slopes of these two lines. In order to find the slope, you can simply put this in slope-intercept form. So what you can do here is get y by itself by adding 4x to both sides. This will cancel out. You have 3y equals 4x plus 15. Divide by 3. And we can see that the slope here is the coefficient of x, or when it's in slope-intercept form, it is the number that represents m. So this is the slope. M equals 4/3. Now, if the slope of 9y equals 12x plus 9 is 4/3, then we know that the lines are parallel. If the slope turns out to be a negative 3/4, then we know that it's perpendicular. If it's anything other than 4/3 or negative 3/4, then we know that the lines are neither parallel or perpendicular. So let's find out what the slope is of 9y equals 12x plus 9. All we have to do is divide everything by 9. This can be a tricky problem if you are not paying close attention to detail, because as you can see, 12 over 9 are both divisible by 12 and 9 are both divisible by 3. 3 goes into 12 4 times. 3 goes into 9 3 times. So 4/3 x plus 1. Again, our slope is 4/3. Therefore, the lines are parallel since both slopes were 4/3. Alright, this concludes the first part of the review for section D. Make sure you watch the second part as well.